She's talking about the governor. She's not talking I. She's talking we, what we can do and how we're going to lead, and we're going to show the way, and we're going to work with President Obama. The only problem was the choreography of the press conference, where they cut it short after about 3 or 4 minutes of questions. She was doing fine, and they stepped in and shut it down.
Is that what happened? I'm sorry. I want Mike in here, but let's take a look at this, Mike, and you jump in and tell me what you see happening here.
Yes, sir.
No, what was that about? I don't know. I was watching it with my wife. I said, who is that guy?
One more question.
I said, who is that? I didn't know. But it was Governor Perry. It was Governor Perry. He went in and shut it off. They had all the governors lined up there, some of them probably unhappily. But she was doing fine, and they were throwing out a lot of questions. All of them obviously had come down there to see her, how to interview her. And I think they should have let her go for 10, 15 more minutes. She was doing fine. And so that looked a little odd or strange.
Did he look like he was patronizing her? Is that what you're saying?
No, I thought it was somebody was stepping in. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, what do you think, Mike Paul? It's hard to read these situations. I heard explained to me that somebody thought that she should take one more question, as if she had been bowing away from the questions, and now Pat sees it as somebody making sure that she didn't talk too long because the other guys wanted to get in there.
Well, she certainly appeared like she wasn't ready for prime time. You know, there's a big difference between being a supportive player as a vice president and then holding the stage yourself, whether you're there as a presidential candidate or whether you're there as a governor who's about to go back to Alaska as a former vice presidential candidate. I think that she needs a lot more work. She's not polished right now. I think she could have a future, but she's got a lot of work to do to prove to the American people that she's ready.
Do you think, while you got the mic here, Mike, do you think that John McCain's glad he picked her?
Well, you know, of course, the party line now is going to say absolutely, as he did on, the Tonight Show the other night and other interviews he's had. But the bottom line is it was a huge risk, and that risk didn't bear fruit. And it might bear fruit for her in the future, 8 years from now, if she has an opportunity to learn more about foreign policy, if she has an opportunity to learn more about economics, and quite frankly, if she has an opportunity to learn more about what it's like to govern as a president. But, Go ahead,
let me say this, look, the only time John McCain was ahead was for the 2 weeks after he picked Sarah Palin. He was about 8 down. We were out there in Denver.
Yeah.
And he pulls
like
ahead.
The hot hand.
Well, she was the hot hand. She got him back into the game. He was 3 or 4 ahead, and all of a sudden the thing crashed, and the fundamentals are sound, and McCain made all those mistakes. You know, rather than knocking Sarah Palin, and she had her bad days.
We're not knocking her, asking the question.
A lot of people are.
Katie Couric had some pretty obvious questions, and those questions helped Katie Couric, but they didn't help the governor.
She didn't do well, and she did terribly in that. There's no doubt about it. But the question is, what about the top of the ticket? Did the Republicans make the right decision on the top of the ticket? I mean, John McCain was the one the party least wanted as nominee. Remember in Pennsylvania? After he'd won it, he was only winning 75% of the vote. Ron Paul and Huckabee picking up 25%. Yeah. That's the key question. We ran a moderate candidate who is not an outstanding candidate. Even he would concede that. He's not a great speaker. He doesn't have a clear-cut conservative philosophy out of which he works. I mean, I thought she helped the ticket. Maybe she heard it. Maybe he did too.
Well,
yeah, but I think you make 2 points that contradict each other. You said he was in the running. He was pretty much evened it out coming out of his convention.
Well, she brought him back into the game.
Yeah,
but you said it was her that brought her back into the game, but it wasn't her that brought him down eventually.
Well, what do you think brought him back into the game after those 2 weeks?
That's right.
Her speech at the convention?
But I think she had the power to bring down as well. You look at the map. The map is so interesting, guys. It taught us more about our country than it did about these people. The country has a lot of geography, Mike, and you and Pat and I know this. This country, look at it. Look at the geography of that country. It's pretty obvious. You want a determination of where you're going to vote? Where you live. Well, that's what that map says. Where you live probably tells you where you're going to vote.
Well, I have something for Pat. I have something for Pat here.
Sure.
I respect him. He's a tremendous man. But the bottom line is we need to think about some bigger ideas here. The party needs to change. The party has some fundamentals right now with a changing demographic situation in our country. Quite frankly, Pat, there are more people that are looking more like me than you, and we need to start looking at that as a party. You've been around a long time, a lot longer than I, but the party's starting to change. It's going through a midlife crisis. The country is speaking, and it's time for the party to follow suit. And it's not. I don't think it's going to be Sarah Palin who's going to be the victor who's going to change that. It's not McCain who is the victor that's going to change that. The party has to have a time of mea culpa, and the time for it is right now.
Well, I'm not sure what they, maybe mea culpa for what Bush did. The two things Bush did
Not
were
necessarily
he got us
Bush.
into that war, and McCain and the Democrats supported it, which was terrible. He had No Child Left Behind in Medicare prescription drugs, which were too much spending, and you got this crash, this economic crash. So look, but let me tell you this, you go back to Nixon.
I'm talking about the party. I'm talking about the party.
Let me talk about the party.
Go ahead.
All right, let me talk about it. Back in 1972, 68, Nixon got about 10% or something of the African-American vote. In 1972, he got 8% of the African-American vote and 25% in the South. Now, that's the way we got it. We worked at it very hard, and others have worked at it and worked at it. Bush worked at it. Melvin and those guys worked at it, and they got down to 3% of the African-American vote. You're not going to win it running against Barack Obama. The Hispanic vote went 2-1 against McCain, and he is Mr. Amnesty.
The party did a horrible job of having outreach, quite frankly, to those people of color in this country, those that are African-American, those that are Latino, those that are Asian. Horrible job. There was a lot of rhetoric. There was not enough money backing candidates. There were not enough money trying to find candidates, and there was a lot of lip service, and that's been going on for a long, long time within the party.
All right, who do you blame, Bush, Melvin, and Rove?
I blame the party overall. I blame the entire tent. I blame a lot of rhetoric with not enough people standing up. I commend the governor of Minnesota, who spoke earlier this evening, who is the future, I think, of this party, and more people like him who are honest enough to say, you know what? The country is changing, the voice has been heard, and we need to make change.
Well, look, excuse me, but this is a bunch of cliches. There's no doubt the Hispanic vote is growing in New Mexico, Nevada, Colorado, and the Republicans could be out of there forever. The immigrants coming in, let's face it, they look to government because 90% are poor, they don't have education, they're looking for jobs and schools and rent supplements and things like that. They're people who believe in government. And the demographics of this country are, you're right, working against the Republican Party. So the question is, do we give up our beliefs, the things we think are right or best for America, in order to try to get more votes? Or do we try to sell what we believe in to these folks?
Or do we truly define ourselves as a big tent party, and we realize that it's not all the ultra-conservatives. It's not all those that are over 65 and 75 years old in this country. We look to the young, and we looked at some of the principles that move not only from those that are old, but those that are young. And I think that's an opportunity for us to look at.
Look, I would love to get all the young voters and all the African-American voters. You haven't told me how to do it other than talk about a big tent.
I'm saying we need to examine ourselves first. We need to examine ourselves first and understand where we've fallen short. Excuse me, Pat? What did you just say?
Well, you examine yourself.
What is that supposed to mean?
Well, let me ask you both a question. Ivan, you and I, let me just quickly go with a cultural point here, which gets beyond issues.
What's with the personal
If you go to a
attack?
Democratic convention, I've been to 10 of them. If you go to Republican conventions, 10 of them, you'll see the difference culturally between the two parties when it comes to color.
You mean racially or ethnically?
Racially.
Yeah.
Ethnically, I like to say it.
Right.
At a Democratic convention, African Americans and other people of color feel very much at home. They're in groups of people. They are celebratory. They're happy to be there because it's their home. Right. You go to a Republican convention, there's 1 or 2 blacks there who feel like they're guests. Well, but that's the difference.
Well, let me talk about that. That goes back clearly to 1964. But as I said, in terms of outreach, I've worked for Nixon. He got 18% and 25% in the South. We did everything in there. Listen, Reagan didn't write these folks off. Chris, work in those White Houses. We know if we can get 20% of the African-American community, we win.
So the Southern strategy in 68 wasn't influential in African-American
strategy. Look, we didn't do this.
You picked up Strom Thurmond. You didn't lose a few million blacks.
What are you talking about? Adlai Stevenson put 2 segregation.
Pat, you're talking about races. You're talking about races from 1964. With all due respect, sir, I don't like your personal attack earlier, but I'll end with this. I was born in 1964. It shows you the difference between you and I. Things have changed. We need to change. The party needs to change. And if we're going to be a big tent party, we need to hear all voices. We don't need to have personal attacks. I'm not here to talk as an African American. I'm here to talk as an American.
Well, look, why don't you get a candidate, go out to Iowa, back him up, and see if he does well. But we nominated the most liberal candidate in the field. That's John McCain. We didn't nominate Tom Tancredo. And so, look, and you got your guy, and it didn't work out.
Last word, Mike.
Go ahead, Mike, last word.
Pat, I respect you as a human being. I am saddened that you had a personal attack on someone, ironically, that's within the same party.
Personal attack?
I don't know.
What's the personal attack?
What was the personal attack? I'm sorry. I want to give you a shot here.
You have to look back at the transcript then to say I need to move to Canada. I mean, come on. We're talking about issues
I didn't say moved.
You didn't say it.
I didn't say move to Canada. What are you talking about?
Pat, that's exactly what you just said a couple of minutes ago. What? I'm not hearing what you said?
Chris and I are sitting across from each other. I will look at the tape, but I didn't say anybody should move to Canada.
Gentlemen, thank you both for coming. Mike, thank you, Pat. Up next, 3